Hello, everybody. Just going to give everyone a minute to finish joining.
That's the Avocademy.
Let's start.
Avocademy version.
Down in Florida.
All right, some of you are not on mute. Okay. So let's start by having you all maybe type into the chat where you all are kind of calling in from. I think we have a good group today here, and then we'll get started. Just waiting for a couple more folks to join. From Seattle, Minneapolis, San Francisco, a little bit all over. Cincinnati, Colorado. Awesome. All right. Today I'm really here just to answer you all's questions. My name is Maca. I'm the founder of Avocademy. I started Avocademy about 3 years ago now, 2.5, 3 years. We've helped a ton of people kind of break into tech, specifically UX UI design. And I'm happy to explain our programs. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all would like, but really I'm here to answer the questions. So feel free to raise your hand. There's like a little raise hand emoji reaction that you can do if you want to come on camera or come off mute and ask your question, or feel free to put it into the chat here. And while I wait for questions to come in, because that typically takes a second, I am happy to maybe just explain the process and how the program works, but I'll be patiently waiting for questions from you all. So we have a 2-step process. The first step is our UX UI Foundations program. In that program, it's an 8 to 16 week program. And in that program, you're going to be doing individual learning. So what that means is that there's a set of activities, there's a set of videos that you're watching, and you're kind of working through those activities and getting feedback from mentors, making sure that your work is good, iterating on them, making sure that like you are actually learning what you need to learn to be able to change careers and learn UX UI design. And through that program, you get unlimited mentorship. So what that means is that you can schedule as many one-on-one Zoom calls with, I think at this point we have 180 mentors. So you can schedule as many Zoom calls as you like. Those are one-on-one. So you'll get that individualized help on whatever it is that you're stuck or you want a little bit more help with in your activities. And then once you finish that program, you can apply for our Career Jumpstart program. And our Career Jumpstart program is broken down into 3 parts. The first part is 2 weeks of advanced like technical skills. So we're teaching you things that you need to know to be able to jump into projects. Our second part is working on 2 real world projects. So we partner with an agency called Moment Studio, and we put you together in teams of 3 to 5 students, and then you go and do work for a client for anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So you'll do 2 additional real world projects, and that's really meant to help you get that experience that you'll need to be able to interview for jobs. And then the last 6 months you'll spend applying for jobs. So we'll support you in your job search by keeping you accountable for how many jobs you need to apply to, mock interviews, helping you with your portfolio, helping you with your resume. Like we'll really kind of hold your hand through the entire process. Okay. And I hope that makes sense. I did that really fast. So if you all have specific questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to start reading some of the questions here. Lauren said, I am starting on Monday. I would really like to be doing anything that I can outside of the academy to be noticed and to get a job. Is there anything that you suggest that we do? So anything? Yeah, so between now and Monday, you do already have access to the course. So you can literally start kind of going through the program. I would say kind of focus on this learning piece. Sorry, I'm letting people into the call at the same time. So I would say focus on learning. If you have extra time to devote to this, devote it to the foundations course as you're going through it, so that that can really kind of like sink in and you're really understanding the process. Once you get to Career Jumpstart, there's like some like complementary skills you could be learning, and that's other design tools or agile or prototyping. There are some additional things, but when you're starting, instead of trying to do too much kind of everywhere, I would really say just focus on learning, right? Like focus on really absorbing everything we're trying to teach you in UX UI foundations before you start to kind of grab at too many things. To stand out, really what you want to do is get more experience. So the one thing we tell folks when they're in Career Jumpstart is like, do as many projects as possible, and real world projects way more than like fake projects or like bootcamp projects. So the projects that we do with Moment Studio, those are with real clients. They're very much real world projects. So to stand out, I would say, you know, go through foundations as fast as you can while really focusing. And then when you get to Career Jumpstart, do more than 2 projects so that you can like have more projects in your portfolio. Okay, next question. Do you think a graduate would see a higher salary being in the San Francisco Bay Area? Yeah, salaries are interesting. So the US national average for an entry-level UX designer or a junior UX designer is $65,000 a year. The data I think is outdated. Our average is $85,000 a year. And that gives you a range of people that are making from the 65 all the way to some individuals that make, I think the highest we've seen so far has been $187,000 starting. And I think when I say that, individuals are like, that person already had experience, and they didn't, right? Like everyone that kind of goes through our program has no experience in UX UI design. Like we are helping them learn UX UI design. So salaries really depend on the type of company you're going to work at. A big company might be able to pay you more. A startup that has been recently funded that is based in the Bay Area is probably going to pay more. So you want to look not only at your location, but also where the company is located that you're applying to. So with the last couple of years, the majority of work has moved to being remote. So salary, like localization, is not as big of a deal. So you're actually going to want to be looking at companies in the Bay Area if you want a Bay Area salary, rather than you living in the Bay Area, which is how salaries used to work, was where you lived instead of where the company was located. Hey, in the step 1 program, so that's our Avocademy UX UI Foundations program. If you decide UX isn't for you, is there a cancellation time where you get a prorated refund? So we don't do prorated refunds. We do 100% refunds within the first 7 days. So you have 7 days from when you purchase to get the entire money back. After that, there's no refunds. So you want to make sure that you're sure within those 7 days, like dive into the course, you get access to the entire course. You can just like start poking to see if like learning that way is for you or not. For those of you that are not sure if UX is for you, we did just launch like a very cheap intro course. It's $2.65. So I can share the link to that before this call's over, so that you all can see the structure of the course of foundations and kind of what UX is, what the roles are, the salaries, the tools, and things like that. But the refund period is 7 days from when you sign up. Unless you're in the UK, I believe it's 14. It's location based. Cool, Lauren, already submitted activity 1. Awesome. That's great. You're getting ahead, which is great. Kate, what are some of the biggest challenges UX workers face? I would say the biggest challenge is when you're working in a company that maybe doesn't value UX as much as they should. So sometimes when you're working in really large enterprise companies, like much older companies, you have a UX role, but they don't bring you into meetings, or, you know, they listen to the developers more than the designers. So I think there's a constant kind of battle of like showing the worth of design in roles sometimes. And that can get kind of tiring after a while, but design itself, I think, is fun. You get to really like understand how people work and solve problems. And even though it's kind of like the same process or like the same skills, it's always different because you're always kind of like solving a different problem through the same process. I'm a person that gets bored really easily. So when I found UX design, I was like, okay, this is for me. It feels like it, you know, there's some consistency, but it's always changing. Yeah. Donald, for someone who's learning UX design outside of the foundations course, is there a way to join Career Jumpstart without taking the foundations course? If so, what does that take? That's a great question. I'm going to be really honest with you all. You can apply to the Career Jumpstart program. If you email info@avocademy.com and give us some samples of your current work, we will review it. And if it's good enough, we will send you the application so that you can do the challenge and apply for a Career Jumpstart. That happens very rarely. And what I mean by that is we have individuals that have done the Google Coursera course, and then they're like, I spent 6 months doing this certificate. I want to apply to Career Jumpstart. And I look at it and the work is just not good at all. Like there's just a ton of red flags. There's like huge buttons and things that don't match, and like these decorative fonts that are like, you know, Comic Sans looking. And there's just a lot of red flags that show that the foundations of design have not been really like grasped. And it would really be a disservice to you all, as well as to the current students in Career Jumpstart, to let you all into the program, because Career Jumpstart moves fast. Like you are assigned a project and you have 4 weeks to deliver. So if you still don't understand like why that font doesn't go with this font, or why the button can't be this big and it needs to be this big, you're really going to struggle through that program. So I would say, you know, what it takes is for you to have at least one really well done case study that shows that you understand the foundations of design. So what does that mean? You have some research, some wireframes, and some UI components that do not have red flags that can show me and the admissions team that you've learned the basics. I don't think it's impossible. I self-taught myself design. I didn't do any program. So I do think it's possible if you put a lot of work into it. The hardest part is that you don't have anybody correcting you. So you could spend 6 months in the Google UX course and you have other students saying like, good job, good job, good job, but you all are learning and you're missing like critical parts of the process. So I don't want to guarantee that anyone will get admitted into Career Jumpstart. But if you're interested, you can email info@avocademy.com with some samples of your work, asking for the Career Jumpstart application. And then we'll tell you kind of like yes or no if you can go ahead with the application. If there's any more specific questions about that, feel free to type them in here and I'll try and answer them. What type of support do you have during the job search process? Do you just have people apply to a lot of jobs on job boards, or do you have specific companies you work with that students can make personal connections with? Yeah. So the job search process includes resume review, a portfolio review, resume tailoring, access to a resume tailoring tool that helps you tailor your resume to each job you're applying to, access to a tool that helps you track your applications, reminders weekly of you completing those applications, unlimited mock interviews. So we connect you with it's called a pre-interview strategy session, behavioral mock interviews, portfolio mock interviews, design challenge mock interviews. Interviewing for a design job is like a process. So we kind of go through each step and provide you the mentorship to help you through that and to practice. You also get access to a daily 30-minute call where other students are kind of joining and talking about their experience so far. And you get access to specific referrals through our network. So I'll be honest, the specific referrals is probably not the biggest value add. It is a good value add. But I think the community and the network and all that support is the biggest value add. So we do have past grads as well as partners that say, hey, we need to hire 3 designers in this city doing this, or with this skill set or with this previous background. And we post those into our network and try and match up students. The the connection of our graduates, I think, is our strongest advantage. So I'll be doing a grad series in a couple of weeks. We had 2 students about a year and a half ago go through CJ. They each got jobs. One of them got her second job, and then she ended up helping the other student get hired at the company. So both of their second jobs were together, right? And those connections wouldn't happen if it wasn't through the program. We also have students that are saying, hey, I'm going on to my second job. My company needs to backfill. They really liked me. So can you like send a list of Avocademy students that we can get into that role? So we do we do have those connections, but it's not the biggest advantage of CJ. I think it's the structure and the support that you get during the job search. And I don't want to avoid the, do you just have to apply to a lot of jobs? The answer is yes. You have to apply to a lot of jobs. The job market's a little difficult, and there's I mean, the good thing is there's a lot of jobs. You won't run out of jobs to apply to, but it is kind of a numbers game at a certain point. Let's see. These are great questions. What type of things do you see as a reason why people are not landing jobs after CJ? So to date, we have a really high job placement rate. The people that don't land jobs, typically, the majority of them are not applying to enough jobs. So we have like a certain number of jobs you have to apply to every month, and you have to be consistent. You have to be taking the advice that we give you on how to edit your resume and how to edit your portfolio and kind of like be on top of that. And what we see is just that people either apply to a ton of jobs, but never fix their resume, or like apply to a ton of jobs and they added some random things to their portfolio that shouldn't have been added. That's kind of hurting them, or they just don't apply to enough jobs. They get discouraged. The job search is not easy. And I'm not saying this to discourage anyone. I just want to be really realistic. There's a huge payoff to landing a UX UI design job, but it's hard, right? Like it could take 6 months to find a job. It could take 2 weeks. It could take 4 weeks. It could take 4 months, but it could take up to six months. So you have to kind of be ready for that kind of like emotional roller coaster of like, awesome, I just submitted 50 applications. And then like, you don't hear anything for a week or two. Because the hiring process is so long. We just had a student land a job that she had applied to in November, and they had just responded in January, and she just started the interview process, and she just got that job in March. So you can see how like an application in November landed a job in March. It doesn't say much about the student's skills. It's just that company took a long time to go through their hiring process. So there's so many outside factors kind of weighing in. I hope that helps. Do we apply to Career Jumpstart separately, or is it part of the main course? It's 2 separate programs. So UX UI Foundations is our intro course. Once you finish that, you can apply to Career Jumpstart. And the application for Career Jumpstart is essentially completing a small design challenge that makes sure that you understood what was taught in Foundations. We review your Foundations portfolio. And if you did Foundations, we also check the notes from the mentors, right? So like, did you take feedback well? Were you receptive? Did you schedule calls? Like we look at all of that to make sure that you're going to be successful in Career Jumpstart. Our goal is to help people land jobs. So we want to make sure we accept all the people that we think would be the most successful at finding those jobs. And if there's any red flags, we want to make sure to address that with you before like we take your money and then we can't help you, right? Like we're really out here trying to help you all find jobs. From your perspective, could you share what the current job market looks like compared to 1 year ago, including recent tech layoffs for entry-level UX designers? Yes. Today is Friday, March 10th, and I'm putting a time on this just in case this ends up on our YouTube channel. So there's been a lot of layoffs earlier this year in the tech industry, and a lot of companies kind of panicked, and that's all from kind of just the overall financial crisis in the United States. So that, I'll do like a quick lesson. So these tech companies are like, startups or, these, whatever tech companies, they raise money so that they can keep running. And when they raise money, they hire a bunch of people And then when they realize that they're not going to be able to keep raising money, they have to like fire a bunch of people so that they spend less money and they're not like wasting all the money they kind of like raised before, right? So what happened was the financial crisis is kind of ongoing, right? And where companies are realizing that they can't raise more money, or the money is not going to come as easily as it's come before. So they have to make their current money kind of last them as long as possible. And I think it's important to understand that a lot of the companies we see out there are not profitable, like tech companies, right? Like Uber, not profitable. Even though we pay money and we think there's like a big money exchange, they're not actually making money. So they need to keep raising money to make the company bigger and to kind of pay for their employees. So that's kind of like the cause for tech layoffs, which is, I think, outside of most common individuals' control, what's happening with, you know, the finance industry. So that is leading to a lot of layoffs. Layoffs are not only for tech employees, they're just at tech companies, right? So tech companies may be firing project managers, they may be firing designers, they may be firing developers, like they're firing across the board. It's not only like tech roles, it's the company that's essentially suffering or needs to get rid of people. So with that being said, these large companies are probably not where you're going to land your first UX UI design job, right? So the companies that are laying people off and are essentially not hiring as much are not the companies that you would typically find your first design job at, right? So you're not going to get a job at Twitter or Google or any of these big companies that are doing these layoffs. Your first job is probably going to be a much smaller, medium-sized company, probably not in the tech industry, but is tech enabled. So think of like an education company that has some sort of online website or e-commerce or tech, right? Like UX is not only for tech companies. There's healthcare companies, there's insurance companies, there's education companies. So just because tech as an industry is kind of struggling doesn't mean you'll kind of struggle to find a job. We are seeing kind of like a slowdown in hiring because as these companies panic and have to start kind of cutting people, they're a little wary about hiring. And then the other industries are kind of like worry about spending more money. So the hiring has slowed, but it's not like we're not panicking yet. So we're, you know, folks are still able to find jobs. Let's see if there's any follow-ups to that. Okay. Apply. And I'm also like, so I used to be a designer and I had a couple of friends affected from, you know, my designer life, and they've all been able to find jobs pretty quickly, right? Like just because layoffs are happening doesn't mean that like they're not able to find jobs. We had one student affected, one past grad affected by the layoffs, and I think like 4 weeks later he was already hired by another company. So it's not as terrible as like the social media panic and the news panic is making it out to be. Do you prepay for Jumpstart up front or once you're hired? So payment wise, foundations you pay upfront. We do have like buy now, pay later providers, so you could essentially finance foundations, so you don't have to pay it upfront, but you do have to start payments once you start. And Career Jumpstart, you can pay upfront. At the time of this video, it's $5,000 upfront, or you can pay at graduation, financed or in one big lump sum. So there's kind of two payments upfront or at graduation, and we do have a job guarantee. So what that means is if you join Career Jumpstart and you do all the things that we tell you at the times that we tell you, and you don't find a job by the end of those like 6 months of job search, you either get a refund if you paid upfront, or you don't have to pay if you are at grad payment person. So it's called a job guarantee. You have to put in the work, right, to get that money back. So we're not guaranteeing you a job. We're just saying if you can't find a job with the things we're telling you need to do, we won't charge you for it. That's how sure we are that we can help you find a job. Is access to Figma included in the cost for step one, or is there a separate cost, if any? Figma's free, so there's like a free version you can use. It includes everything you need. Once you join Career Jumpstart, We're working with Moment Studio agency, and they have like a special license. So you won't need to pay for anything additional. We also provide, we use Figma and Foundations, but we also have like a partner key for Adobe XD if any of you want to like try that out. And I believe we have an education discount for Sketch if any of you have Macs and want to try that out as well. Let's see. By any chance, do you have any boot camps that deal with people who want to work into 2D fan art? And if not, do you have any suggestions on where they should look? For like graphic design, illustration, we do not have any courses. So aside from Foundations and Career Jumpstart, we have a separate program called Design Masterclass. Design Masterclass is short certifications. So they're anywhere from like 10 to 15 hours. And you can sign up for like a monthly payment and kind of do as many of those as you want. And those are really meant for people with some design experience already. So it's meant once you become a UX designer, you can learn UX design for VR or UX design for Web3 or accessibility research, right? Like they're kind of specialized courses. So we do have one coming up around, I believe it's like UI basics. So it is more about around like visual learnings, but it's not about illustration. For illustration, I think I would look at like some of the big marketplaces that have the cheap courses that are, $10 to $15. Some are even cheaper, like Udemy or Domestika. Like there's some pretty cool instructors on those websites that can teach you this kind of illustration type work. Donald is asking what design programs are learned during Foundations. So there's 3 main design programs. There's Figma, Adobe XD, and Sketch. And that's like the main core designing program. In Foundations, you're going to learn Figma. I like to say that those 3 programs are equivalent to like PowerPoint, Google Sheet, Google Slides, and like Keynote on Mac, right? Like they all 3 do the same thing. And once you know how to use PowerPoint, using Google Slides is pretty easy. It's like a less of a learning curve. So we really focus on teaching you one tool so that you can learn it. And then it's easier to learn the other ones. We'll also kind of teach you how to use collaboration tools like Zoom, FigJam or Miro. We teach you how to use Google Drive. There's a lot of things you'll use, but the main design tool that you'll use is Figma. Job question here is, sorry, was someone coming off mute here? No, okay. So are all jobs remote? So not all jobs are remote. Like if you want an in-person job, that you could probably find an in-person job. We are starting to see some more like hybrid roles. So what that means is that like you're remote like almost all the time, but once a month you need to come into the office, or you're remote 3 days a week and 2 days you have to come into the office. It's pretty easy to find a remote job from the pile of jobs. There's not that many that are requiring like back in office full time. If you land a job in CJ, are you able to decline and continue the job search if it ends up being something you don't like? How many times could you do this? If you land a job in CJ, are you able to decline? Let me make sure I understand this question. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to force you to take any specific job. I think if that's the question, I would say, landing your first job is going to be, is hard, right? Like it's not the easiest job. Landing your second job's easier. Landing your third job's even easier, right? Like your third job might even be presented to you instead of you having to apply. So I would say the first job is not the time to be picky to find like your forever job. It's really the time to take a job that pays enough based on what you're looking at, aligns with your values, I would say, and just kind of work that job for at least 6 months to a year before you start looking for another one. So we will not force you to take a job. And we would encourage you to take a job unless it's something that, maybe like your religion or something doesn't allow you to do. Once you land a job, you're no longer eligible for the job guarantee. So I don't know if that's kind of what you're asking. So you could reject a job as many times as you want, right? Like if you get 10 jobs and you reject all of them, it's okay, right? Like that's your choice. You'll just have to pay for the program because you're getting the help to land the jobs. And we don't see this happen very often. Like people are pretty happy with the jobs they land. I have an architecture portfolio. When applying for jobs, would there be any benefit in including some of this material? Will actually help you craft your story around your architecture experience, and we'll create a UX UI design portfolio that just touches on like how your background in architecture helps you be a better designer. And then if you want, you can link to your architecture portfolio from your UX portfolio, but we wouldn't want you to mix both, right? Like we want to present you as a UX UI designer so you have a better chance of getting a job instead of somebody that can do a ton of things, even if you could do a ton of things. Do you need to be able to draw to be a UX UI designer and be successful in the field? No, you don't need to be able to draw. The most you need to be able to draw are like squares and circles, right? So that you can put together kind of the structure of a screen or a design or a solution. It's helpful to be able to do that, to communicate your ideas. But for the most part, as long as you can use the software, there's ways to like quickly sketch things online that don't require you to like draw a person or an artistic, type of drawing skill. UX is like a creative kind of logical outlet where you can like creatively solve problems, but you don't need to be an artist. How do you think AI will affect the industry? And are you teaching students to use AI in the UX UI design field? I think AI will make the job easier. I don't think specifically UX is a job that will be replaced by AI. I think you have to understand people and you have to understand how they work. And then you have to take that into consideration with the problem they're experiencing, a bunch of constraints, the industry, right? Like there's so many kind of moving parts that I don't foresee like AI taking over all UX UI design jobs anytime soon. I think there's a lot of really cool tools that can be used to aid in creating, right? Like copywriting tools. You can kind of go in there and get like an initial copy to put into your work, but I don't think like, tools will completely replace the field. Julie, do you think age would affect getting a job? I'll answer the question from both perspectives. So if you are really young and don't have any working experience, period, so like you just finished high school or you just got a GED or you just finished college, it does become a little bit more difficult to find a job because someone not only has to trust that you have, you're these brand new UX UI design skills, but they also have to trust that you can hold a job even though you've never held a job. So having any job for at least a year makes it a little bit easier because then you have some stuff to talk about and you have like that bit of experience to kind of lift you up a little bit. The question we also get is on the other end, if you're like over 45, over 50, people think like, am I going to be able to get a job? Like I'm too old, right? We actually see those people have an easier time finding a job because they have so much other like life experience, and it's much easier to kind of present yourself and talk about your experience and get that like respect from other people. So I don't think the worry of, am I going to be able to get a job? I'm too old is something that should be worrisome at all. And if anybody wants to clarify the question, feel free to kind of explain which way you meant and if I answered it. Is it true you take a percentage of our salary first job for 1 year? No, that's not true. We used to have a program. So Career Jumpstart used to be an income share agreement, which means it's 7% of your first year salary. So you wouldn't have to pay unless you got a job, and then you would pay a percentage of that. We decided to move away from that And now we just do that upfront or once you graduate. So there's no percentage of any kind. How much is the foundations course at this time? Are there any discounts? The foundations course is $19.97 right now. And I'm going to put a coupon in the chat for those of you that are live on here. That coupon will give you $200 off, I believe, through Monday. And if it doesn't work, because our head of marketing is not on this call, she's out today, feel free to send an email to info@avocademy.com that you're trying to use the coupon and then it's not working. But we can give you that coupon. Yeah, that's already amazing price compared to others. Yeah, so we're pretty affordable compared to the other programs, especially for everything that we offer. And that's really been the goal here, is to make it more affordable so that we can have, more diverse group of students join our program. So yeah, let's see. What benefits come with having knowledge of psychology and data analysis coding as a UX designer? A lot. Those are all great skills. So a background in psychology really gives you that understanding of people, empathy, how people work, which is like a key skill in succeeding as a UX UI designer. And then, development, you don't need to know how to code at all for this field, but knowing how what you're designing is going to get code is, an upper hand, I guess, if you have that background. And data, right? Like when you're doing research and you get all this data back, being able to analyze that and already having that experience, it's like you already have all the parts and you just need to learn how to kind of put it together. So that sounds like a good background. I wouldn't tell anybody to go get a psychology degree or go get do a data analytics bootcamp or do a coding bootcamp to stand out. But if you already have that experience, I think that's a huge plus. If you know nothing about UX UI design, but have high aspirations to work in this field, would it still be a good idea to go for the job? Yeah, I mean, we've had students go through a program that just saw us on TikTok one day and then they signed up and now they're, making 90K, 6 figures. So you don't need to have any experience. Like we literally walk you through module 1. What is UX? What is UX UI? What is the difference? What are the job roles? And we'll hold your hand through the whole thing. We've had students that didn't know how to use a computer, didn't know how to copy paste. We taught them how to copy paste, and then we went all the way through and taught them how to design apps, right? Apps and websites. So you do not need to have experience. I would say this program would really show you if this is something you enjoy and if it's something you want to pursue. And that's really why we've made it into 2 parts, right? You have foundations. By the time you're done with foundations, you're going to be really certain if it's for you or not. And if it's for you, you can make the bigger jump to kind of pursue the career. But this helps you get very in-depth, hands-on, all the help you need to figure out if it's for you and if you like it. Okay. And before we start losing folks, because I see the numbers here, I'm going to add a link here to the intro course. So this is not the foundations course. The intro course is a very short course. It's under 3 hours. It teaches you what UX is, what UI is, the different roles, the tools, and it kind of tells you a little bit more in an informational setting of what this is so that you can decide if you want to do foundations or not. The intro course is $2.65. It's the price of adding guac to your Chipotle order. And it's really meant to just give you a better understanding in one place of how we teach and what you're going to learn if you do sign up. So I just put the link in the comments here so that you all can check that out if you're interested, if you're still unsure if it's for you or not. Let's see. What is the main difference between UX and UI? And does the foundations course teach both? Yes. So I'm gonna have a sip of water and then I'm gonna walk through this. So UX is how things work. It stands for user experience. And UI stands for user interface, and it's how things look. It's a very simple definition of both. So if we're thinking about designing an app, think about, UX is a grayscale, so it's in black and white, and we don't care about the colors at this point. We just care about, hey, here's a form and I need to submit it. So I need to add a button. So there should be a button under it. And the form should have first name, last name, email, and phone number, because that's the information I'm trying to collect. And when they press submit, it should check that all the fields are filled in, and it should send me to the next page, right? That's UX, right? It's how is this going to work? How am I going to achieve the goal that I'm trying to achieve? How am I going to solve the problem of the business or the individual? UI would be, okay, UX designer said there's this form with this button. What color should I make, the outline of the form fields? They should probably all be really light and not bright colors that are distracting me. What color should be the button? Maybe we don't make it red, because red signifies fear or you're doing something wrong, right? So maybe we make it like a light color, and we don't use colors that our brain and like psychology tells us that are unsafe. So that's a difference between UX and UI. So when it comes to designing apps, how it works, how it looks. In foundations, we're going to teach you UX research, which is how you understand people, how you create surveys, interviews, a lot of the understanding of a problem, defining a problem, doing research to inform your UX design, which will also teach you. So UX design is going to be, what are the pages on the app? What happens when I click here? What does each screen kind of look like in that kind of black and white look? And then we teach you UI design, which is, color theory, like how should this page look? What are some common themes and patterns that we see in apps that we use every day? So we go through the whole process. We even teach a little bit of testing, like how can you test that that's actually going to work and solve the problem? So in foundations, we want to teach you everything so that you can figure out which parts you like and which parts you don't. When you join Career Jumpstart, you can pick which of the projects you want to put your name for. And what that means is maybe there's an only research role and you only want to do research, you can do that. Or maybe there's, you really like UI, so you're going to pick a project that for sure has UI in it. And then you can kind of figure out which way you want to go. You don't need to decide which way you want to go. It's actually much better to be a generalist and do a little bit of everything these days as a starting point. And I touch on that in the intro course that I shared a link to as well. Okay. What is the best way to build your resume as a UX UI designer? So I think the approach that we take is really the best approach, which is why we take it. And that's making sure you get some real world experience. So if you're not going to go through a program, you can do what I did back in the day, which was I went on Craigslist and I looked at businesses that were looking for website designs or app designs. And I reached out to them and I offered to do free work for them. And I built my portfolio. So like the resume doesn't matter as much. What matters is the portfolio. The portfolio needs to show samples of your work. The samples of your work need to be good. And to do that, it's much better to do it with real projects. So that's why on our end in foundations, you're doing like a fake project that you pick the problem you want to solve. But in Career Jumpstart, you're doing real projects, right? Like that's why we partner with Moment Studio to put you with these real startups and nonprofits for you to do real work. So I would say like build your resume by building your portfolio. What's behind the name Avocademy? It's embarrassing. So I really like avocados and I really like tacos. And when I was coming up with a name for the company back in the day, I was going to call it Taco Academy. And my partner was like, that is dumb. It's not a good name. So at some point we were watching TV and she was like, what about Avocademy? And I was like, that's it. And we kind of stuck with the name, but it really stems for my love for tacos and avocados. I grew up in Argentina and honestly didn't have an avocado until I was probably 18 years old. So it's a very recent, not so recent because I'm much older than that, but it's a recent obsession with avocados and tacos. I think you mentioned that you don't need to know how to code to enter the field. Is that correct? Yes, there's no coding involved. UX UI design is everything that comes before coding. It's like figuring out how the app is going to work, how it's going to look, and then you work with a developer to actually go ahead and build that. You do not need to code that yourself. As you progress in your career, do employers expect you to learn JavaScript or any other coding languages in the UX UI environment? Nope, no JavaScript, specifically not JavaScript. So what you design needs to be able to be built, right? With, whatever coding language people are using. Typically front-end coding languages like HTML, CSS basics. So what we teach you is responsive design. So responsive design talks to you about building things in grids because that's how developers code. It talks to you about creating text styles and color styles and things that are repetitive because that's how CSS works. So we're teaching you coding fundamentals through design without having to teach you coding. So if at any, if you wanted to learn how to code, just because really wanted to, you could learn HTML, CSS. JavaScript, I think, is a reach because JavaScript is now how things work. And if you're designing something and you want to figure out if a developer is going to be able to build it, you can ask the developer you're working with, or you can Google how, calendar picker templates, JavaScript, and you can see how it works. You don't need to know how to code it to see how to design it. So in very small companies where they can't afford a developer and a designer, they're just going to hire a developer and their design's probably going to suffer is kind of the avenue. In large companies, if someone's asking you to code, it's probably not a good sign, right? I think UX and UI have separated themselves enough where at really established companies, you have UX researchers, you have UX designers, and you have UI designers. At some companies, you have product designers that kind of do a little bit of everything, but it's not likely to see a UX UI design developer. At that point, it's just a developer that maybe has some design skills. Great foundations and CJ programs, tending to sign up. Do you have recordings of the last 2 to 3 Zooms with grads talking about their experience? I would love to hear about their personal journey. Yes, so we have all of our grad panels posted on YouTube. I think maybe the last one is missing to be uploaded, but we're kind of wrapping up thumbnails and everything to put that on there. We have a grad panel coming up next Friday and another one the following. So this one next Friday is going to be with some recent grads, I believe. And the one 2 Fridays from now is going to be, sorry, it's not next Friday, it's next Thursday. And let me just get you all a date. So the next grad panel is March 16th, 2023 at 5 p.m. Eastern. So that's the next one. And then following that, we have a grad panel. I think it's the 24th. Yes, it's the 24th at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's going to be with the 2 grads that I mentioned that now are on to their second jobs or ended up working together. So that's going to be like a 1.5 year look, which is going to be interesting because I believe most of our grads that we talked to have, landed a job within the last 6 months. What's also really cool that I enjoy doing is once our grads find jobs, we put them into an alumni Slack channel, and in there people are just constantly asking questions and kind of leaning on each other as you start the job. And we do calls at least once a month where kind of all the grads come together and talk about how it's going. So you kind of have the support system ongoing, not just while you're looking for a job. It's a funny question. What do you have to say to the overthinkers? I think you just have to try it, and I'm guessing you're saying overthinking about doing this or not, right? Taking the jump into UX, UX UI design. And I'll tell you a little bit about my kind of path and my career path. I'm a person that, I went to college for mechanical engineering, and I worked for Delta for a little bit, and I hated it. That was a maintenance engineering job. I was making instruction manuals all day long. And I was like, okay, I don't like working in maintenance. And then I went and I got a job at Boeing, and it was a design engineer job, designing the parts you touch, the walls of the airplane. And I got there and I was like, man, I really hate this job. Like it was just boring, right? Like it was not for me. So I was like, okay, so maintenance is not for me, design engineering is not for me. And eventually I found UX. And I think I didn't know right away that it was for me. I was just under the impression of like, I'm going to try this and see it if it's for me. So I really do think you need to just jump in and try it. If you're someone that's, empathetic, you'd like to solve problems, you're creative, like this seems like something that's sparking interest, which I bet it is, because you all have spent the last hour listening to me talk. I would say take the jump. If you want to like sign up for that intro course that I share, so you see the format and you kind of can start. That intro course will get you started on the first activity, and we'll get you a call with a mentor to kind of review it. You can kind of take that first step. It's a $2.65 commitment. And once you do that, I think maybe you'll feel a little bit more confident about jumping into to the foundations course. But really the way we've split it up is for that, right? Like a lot of people really overthink this. And if you were to sign up for a course that's $15,000, $24,000, that's a big decision to make. Whereas, we know $2,000 is still a big decision to make. It's just not as big. And it's a little bit of a smaller risk to take to see if it's for you or not. But I would say just do it. We have people that I talked to on like a sales call 3 years ago that wait a year to sign up, and then they get a job. And I get messages that say, man, I wish I would have signed up when I first talked to you, not a year later. Because it took them, 8 months to find a job. And here we are, they could have done all of that much, much earlier. But I get it. So. When does the next foundations course start? Weekly, monthly? Yeah, we start every week. So our foundations course starts every Monday, as long as we have spots for the month. So we have a set amount of students we take each a week to make sure we have support for all of you. So if you're ready to sign up, you can go to our website, kind of scroll down to the payment options, select the payment option that you want to proceed with. And when you select that payment option, you'll see a drop down of your start date. So if the start date is available, that means that we haven't closed the month yet. So I believe we still have, I think I saw it was like 2 or 3 spots left if you wanted to start in March. So like next Monday or the following Monday. And 10 for April. So we try and limit it. So we're not like, having tons of people at the same time, but every Monday. On the job, do you usually work with other UX UI designers as part of a team, or usually on your own as a designer? It really depends on where you're working and the type of job. We have a channel in the grad channel called Sole UX UI Designer, which is meant for everyone that works alone to talk to each other. So for a smaller company, you may be the sole designer. As an entry level, you're most likely going to be reporting to at least one senior designer, or you could be working in a team. Even though you're working in a team, you'll probably have individual tasks, right? Like even if all of you are working on a website, you're going to be working alone on a piece. It's not like 3 people actively designing one tiny piece for the most part. So you get to do like heads down work, and you get to collaborate with others, which I really liked. I know you all hear me here talking and probably see me on TikToks and stuff like that, but I'm very much an introvert. And that was my favorite part of the job, was that I had some heads down time. I got to do the creative stuff. I got to do the design, and then I would jump on a call and talk through the designs with my coworkers and kind of work through that. So there was like a little break in between the calls and all of the stuff that typically a design job entails. What is your favorite aspect of the UX designer role, and do you still do any UX projects? I love the creative problem solving. Like I love that kind of, hey, you have a task, how are you going to solve it, and thinking through all the different iterations. I'm a very logical person. So for me, I'm like, okay, we can do it this way or this way or this way or this way. I come up with like 20 different ways to do something. Do I still do any UX projects? Yes, for Avocademy. So we have internal tools that we use to kind of keep track of everyone in the course and make sure that we deliver a great experience for all of you. So I typically work through Moment Studio, and I launch projects through Moment Studio for Avocademy. So we design the the internal mentor portal for our mentors, and I get to do some work there, which is fun. And we have a full-time developer on our team, and he reports to me, so I get to do work with him as well. I miss it. I didn't know that starting this company would lead to this huge company. So I definitely do miss design work. How could we become mentors? Mentors of Avocademy. So we have different types of mentors at Avocademy. So we have Slack mentors, and we have two different types of Slack mentors, and then we have one-on-one call mentors. So one-on-one call mentors, you need to have at least 1 year of design experience before you can become a mentor. So our mentors typically have 3+ years of design experience. And those are people that are full-time designers working at all sorts of different companies and talking to you and helping you kind of work through that, like the activities that we have. Slack mentors, you also need to be a full-time designer. So yeah, I think we have applications for mentors. So if you're interested, you can message me at info@avocademy.com, but you do need to have design experience to become a mentor. The only types of mentors that we take that don't have design experience are student success mentors. And those are people that's more of like a customer service type mentor role, where you're just like following up with people and making sure they're like emotionally okay as they're going through the program. How do I respond to negative feedback? Is that a question about like as a UX UI designer, like if someone's like, that sucks, like that screen that you designed sucks? Yeah. Yeah, you have to learn to not take feedback personally. I would say that, the good part about designing is that you're solving a problem in a lot of different ways, and you're solving for the user. So as long as you can prove that that's what the user wants, and that's how, the problem will be best solved and give the best results, then the feedback that you're getting from stakeholders, you just have to learn kind of take it and roll with it, make changes as you need to. As you're learning in our program, like we really expose you to that. We'll ask you to do iterations on your designs until they're perfect. And we have lessons in the course that are like, iteration is the big part of the design process. Like, you're going to do one and we're going to tell you, it's okay, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, explain why you did this, and you're kind of work through it. So it's very, very much an iterative process, but you do have to learn to not take things personally. I used to get really hurt in my first role when someone would be like, we're not going to do that, or that's not going to get built. I would take it really personally, and I had to learn to kind of let go of some of that. Have you ever hired one of your own grads? Yes, we have in 2 full-time roles, some past grads that they kind of went on to work for about a year and a half, and then they've come on to work. So yes. More questions for me. Who are some of your personal mentors? I have a lot of mentors from the business side of things. So I've gone through a couple of startup accelerator programs. So I have some mentors there. I don't have like design mentors or people that I look kind of up to, just because I'm not so deep in that anymore. But when I was designing, I was going through a lot of conferences and stuff. And there's some really cool people out there posting content on LinkedIn, posting content on YouTube, that I highly suggest you all watch, especially if you're going to go into the field. We share the content in the course too, like, this conference, or, this person is speaking, he has like a great sense of humor, or things like that. So we'll share some of that too. All right, last 2 questions. Is there any discussion or consideration of Avocademy starting a podcast? When I get asked to be on podcasts, I most of the time say yes, or I was saying yes a lot last year. So I've been on a couple of podcasts. We have a couple of YouTube series that we do where I do one-on-one interviews with our mentors. And sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, so I do one-on-one interviews with our past students, and then we post them on YouTube, but we don't do we don't do podcasts. Just not something where we could consider. It sounds like more work for me, but we could consider. Christopher, if we are stuck coming up with a project idea and foundations, are we able to help choosing an idea? For sure. So actually your first activity is choosing the project, and we walk you through it step by step. So if you join that that intro course, and let me just send some of these links. I know a couple of you are still on here. So this link is for the intro course. That is the $2.65. And in that course, there's an activity, and the activity is actually step by step how to choose an idea. And once you kind of go through the activity and put some of your hobbies and some problems and things like that, you'll jump on a call and a mentor will actually help you pick one and make sure kind of future thing to make sure it'll lead to a good project for you. So for sure, there's so much help in the program, and it's kind of built that way to help everybody from all sorts of different levels succeed. Awesome. Yeah, thank you all for joining. These were great questions. I was a little worried because there weren't, there was 12, 15 people on here, but you all kept me going with all these questions. So that's awesome. Thank you all for joining. If there's any questions about anything that I said, feel free to email info@avocademy.com. Over the next couple of days / week, I still am answering to those personally. So if you do have any follow-ups, feel free to email there. So that's info@avocademy.com. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Bye, y'all.